I can't take it anymore. Please, let's get a divorce. Divorce? You're just after my money, aren't you? Just so you know, you're not getting any of my assets if we split. Yes, and if we do divorce, you're taking our daughter with you. After the divorce from her husband, she enjoyed quiet days. However, about a week after she moved back to her parents' home, her smartphone repeatedly rang. Hello? Hey, it's Karen. Please help me. My name is Kelly, and I'm a 31-year-old homemaker. I met Ken, my husband, after I started working. At the age of 25, I was invited by a friend to a matchmaking party where I met him. We kind of hit it off, and he seemed to take a liking to me and pursued me passionately. After several dates, we started dating and eventually got married. After we got married, at his request, we rented an apartment close to his parents' house. Although there were some disagreements, we maintained a good distance from his easygoing father and somewhat stern mother without any major issues. Our busy yet peaceful days were happy, and life with my husband was a lot of fun. One day, I found out I was pregnant, which thrilled me as I had always wanted children. Thinking about the future, I planned to return to work after maternity leave, but my husband wanted me to take care of our baby and stay close to the child, so I quit my job. I agreed with my husband's thinking, so I didn't regret quitting at all. Above all, my husband, who told me to rest assured because he would provide for us, was dependable. But not everything about being pregnant was joyful. When I told my in-laws about the pregnancy, my father-in-law was very happy and congratulated us, but my mother-in-law had a stern look on her face and said to me, "Make sure you have a boy." Her words weighed heavily on me. I loved my child, whether it was a boy or a girl. However, my mother-in-law strongly hoped for a boy. To avoid any unnecessary drama, I just smiled and brushed it off at the moment, but it really upset me. I'm not having a child for my mother-in-law or anyone else. I just want to build a happy home with my coming child and my husband. But now that I'm gonna be a mom, I need to be able to keep a straight face even when pressured like this. I decided I need to be strong. However, with the severe morning sickness dragging on, I started losing my mental composure, and it became hard to just laugh off the pressure from my mother-in-law. Foods that I used to enjoy before pregnancy now make me nauseous just by looking at them. My cravings keep changing, and I've been in a physically and mentally tough situation. It's gotten to the point where I don't even want to go outside, and I've been staying home more and more. Despite how bad I felt lying there nauseous, my husband unreasonably demanded housework. "Hey, where's my dinner?" "Sorry, the morning sickness is really bad. I haven't been able to make it yet." I had told him beforehand to eat out. There was a high chance I wouldn't be able to make dinner also. But he just glared at me with a harsh face. "Huh? Morning sickness isn't a sickness, right? Then don't slack off on the chores. Get up and cook, you lazy bum." With a look of disgust and a heavy sigh, my husband glared at me. I wish I could do the housework properly if I could. But cooking has been difficult with constant nausea. My husband wouldn't forgive me. "Come on, get up off the couch already. You're really sloppy." All I could do was apologize while suppressing my nausea. "I'm sorry, but I've been feeling sick all the time. Just the smell of the food ingredients makes me want to throw up. Let me rest a bit more and then I'll cook. Why don't you take a bath first?" When I said that, my husband looked exasperated. "Are you still planning to rest? I can't believe you're always at home and can't even manage your health. You know you're being supported by me, right?" That's how he always harshly throws words at me. Reluctantly, I got up unsteadily and, while enduring his sarcastic remarks, I made his dinner. Since the pregnancy started and morning sickness kicked in, my husband began to make verbally abusive comments. He used to say, "Don't worry, I'll support us," but now it's, "Be grateful that you're being supported." Where did that reliability go? The pressure repeatedly put on me by my mother-in-law, who came to check on me now and then, seemed to make my morning sickness worse. The only one who scolded them and showed understanding of my condition was my father-in-law. Why do you keep putting pressure on her like this? Normally, you'd be kinder and watch over her. Don't you know how hard pregnancy can be? When the dignified father-in-law spoke, even the mother-in-law fell silent. His presence was truly a blessing. Thanks to my father-in-law, I was able to get through several tough periods of morning sickness and reach the day of delivery. The baby born was a very cute girl. I named her Hannah, hoping she would shine as her name suggests. This must be what they mean when they say the apple of my eye. She was truly angelic. My husband was also delighted with our long-awaited child. My father-in-law was very happy too, lifting my daughter in his arms. In contrast to the doting father-in-law, the mother-in-law didn't pay any attention to my daughter. I had thought she would cherish her once she was born, but it seems she only acknowledged boys. You really did it, huh? I told you to have a boy, didn't I? Why couldn't you do what you were told? If there's someone out there who can choose the gender of their baby and deliver accordingly, I'd love to meet them. I was utterly fed up with my mother-in-law's irrational remarks. From then on, my mother-in-law acted as if my daughter didn't exist, and she started attacking me with even harsher words than when I was pregnant. Even when my daughter tried to play with her grandmother, she would quickly go away as if to say, "Don't come near." And my husband did nothing to admonish his mother. On the contrary, although he was happy right after our daughter was born, as soon as he realized how tough parenting was, he decided that housework and childcare were women's work and left it all to me. I was deeply disappointed with my husband who wouldn't help with anything around the house or with our child. It's unbelievable he wouldn't even spend time with his own precious daughter. Even our young daughter could feel she was being treated unfairly, saying she didn't really like daddy and grandma, and she didn't warm up to my husband or mother-in-law. It's no surprise they were displeased by our daughter not being affectionate towards them. But such convenient things just don't happen. The only one who reached out to help me, overwhelmed with childcare, and thought of my daughter was my father-in-law alone. He would help out with the housework, saying, "Rest, I'll handle this," and played with my daughter, showing how much he supported us. However, one day, this pillar of support had an accident while out and injured his leg, leading to hospitalization. That's when my mother-in-law's tyranny began. With my father-in-law out of sight, she began calling me and my daughter to her house more frequently, claiming it was an emergency. "Kelly, come quickly, it's an emergency!" Rushing to my in-law's house, I found my mother-in-law smirking with a broom in hand. "You're not working, so can you clean up? And do the shopping too, please." That's how she started dumping all the housework on me. At its worst, I even had to run errands to buy snacks she craved from the department store. My mother-in-law, also a homemaker with plenty of time, never worked herself. If I protested, even in front of my daughter, the sarcasm would come back tenfold. That's why I gradually stopped resisting. My husband did absolutely no childcare or housework, just loafed around whenever he was home. And my mother-in-law, thinking I should be the one moving, never once scolded him. It happened on the way back from shopping with my daughter, as instructed. Around the corner near my in-laws' house, I could hear my mother-in-law and a neighbor talking. I naturally stopped and listened in on their conversation. "My daughter-in-law is so selfish and rude, it's terrible. She complains about everything, truly the worst. My son is so kind that he looks the other way, but I feel like I need to teach her properly. Having a bad daughter-in-law is such a struggle for a mother-in-law." The topic my mother-in-law was happily chatting about was her gripes about me. As if agreeing with her demeaning tone, several people were laughing. If she thinks it's so bad, she should do the housework herself. Was everything I did for my mother-in-law meaningless? I instinctively gripped my daughter's hand tighter. And as the conversation got more heated, my mother-in-law even began to complain about my daughter. "And the granddaughter isn't cute at all. She doesn't warm up to me one bit. It must be her mother putting ideas in her head. Otherwise, she would naturally like me." I quickly covered my daughter's ears, but she might have heard a bit, as her expression clouded over. It's not me but my mother-in-law who is the reason she doesn't warm up, yet she always wants to blame others. Because of my mother-in-law spreading gossip, neighbors started whispering and looking at me suspiciously. I'd want to rely on someone, but my family is as far as a plane ride away, and I don't have friends nearby. If I stay here any longer under these conditions, I'm gonna lose it. Though I haven't planned any specific actions yet, my desire to get a divorce was growing. At least I should try to reduce the time I spend at home more than necessary to avoid my mother-in-law. If I could start working, it would distance me from my in-laws and prepare me for the future. Housework, childcare, and work would increase, but I wanted to keep my distance from my mother-in-law. For that, I needed to put my daughter in daycare. I decided to discuss it with my husband right away. But he furrowed his brows and yelled at me. Huh? Of course not. How can you even think of leaving your child with someone else? Are you even a real mother? That's absolutely unacceptable. You're really a terrible wife. How could he say that? He's always lounging around on weekends and never takes care of our daughter. To my surprise, my husband immediately contacted his mother. He tattled as if it were wrong for me to want to work, and upon hearing this, my mother-in-law rushed over from her house. What are you thinking? It's natural for a mother to stay at home and take care of the house. Why don't you understand that? My mother-in-law shouted angrily like that. Basically, both my husband and mother-in-law just want me to be a convenient housekeeper. If I went to work, their handy helper would be gone. Being attacked by both of them at once, I didn't even have a chance to respond, and the next day the snide remarks from my mother-in-law got worse. Eventually, all talk of daycare and working fizzled out. After a while, my father-in-law was discharged from the hospital, but the days of being summoned by my mother-in-law whenever he was away continued. And the days of being belittled and burdened with menial tasks drained me more and more. My husband, too, would blame me along with his mother without defending me. Trapped, my spirit began to erode. Gradually, I found it hard to eat, and sleepless nights became more frequent. Sometimes my stomach would suddenly hurt, or tears would come even though I wasn't sad. Seeing the tears rolling down my face silently, my daughter looked at me with a worried expression. I knew this couldn't go on, causing unnecessary worry to my young daughter. That's why I started going to a psychiatrist. The likely cause was severe stress, which I had plenty of reason to suspect. Maybe I really should get a divorce. Though the thought of divorce crossed my mind many times, it would mean taking away her father from my daughter. Plus, I hadn't even secured a job yet. Could I really go through with a divorce under these circumstances? With so many uncertainties, I found it hard to take that first step. But as a means of self-defense, I started carrying a voice recorder just in case. It might come in handy someday. I think I just wanted to create anything that could serve as a mental anchor. Then, several months later, one day while my husband and father-in-law were at work, as usual, my mother-in-law called me over. The task was to clean the second floor. I did as I was told and started heading up the stairs. That's when, unexpectedly, everything began to spin. A sudden bout of dizziness. As I held my head, my body started leaning backwards. Then, I tumbled down the stairs. When I came to, I was curled up in the hallway on the first floor. My whole body throbbed with pain. My head was foggy, and I couldn't move. Perhaps the loud noise alerted her, because my mother-in-law came to see what had happened. Despite the terrible pain, this was one time I was thankful she came. The pain was so severe I couldn't get up, so I asked my mother-in-law to call for an ambulance. However, she just laughed dismissively. "You're exaggerating. You're conscious, aren't you? Besides, if we call an ambulance, the neighbors will think something's happened. Don't embarrass me like that. If you're really in pain, get up and go by bus. But finish cleaning up first." I was speechless at her response. Telling someone who can't get up to take the bus is insane. This went beyond mere mother-in-law troubles. Even at such a time, my mother-in-law wouldn't lend a helping hand. I guess I had no choice but to handle it myself. "All right, but I'm really in pain, so please let me go to the hospital first." Could you please look after my daughter for a bit? What? What are you saying? Take your daughter with you. Are you listening? I wanted to take my daughter, but it wasn't feasible to bring such a small child in my condition. It would be dangerous if I collapsed again with her there. I reluctantly left my daughter with my mother-in-law and managed to stand up using the wall for support. Even grabbing my bag was painful. In this condition, I doubted I could even make it to the bus stop. So, I called a taxi and somehow made it to the hospital despite the pain. The diagnosis was a fracture. Because I couldn't brace myself properly during the fall, I was told I needed to be hospitalized. Even though it would be a short stay, the thought of informing my husband and mother-in-law weighed heavily on me. Nevertheless, I had no choice but to contact them, and upon hearing the news, my husband and mother-in-law, visibly irritated, came to my hospital room. My frightened daughter immediately ran to my bed and tightly gripped my hand with her little hands. Tears were welling up in her eyes. Then, almost immediately, my husband and mother-in-law began shouting loudly. "Hey, what are you doing? You hurt yourself and even used my money to call a taxi without asking. That's right. Dumping your child on me and going to the hospital without even finishing the cleaning. That's unbelievable. I had plans to go to the department store, and you messed them up." As they hurled relentless insults at me, my stomach began to ache as usual. If only my husband would help with the housework and childcare, and if only my mother-in-law wouldn't delegate chores to me, maybe I wouldn't have had the dizzy spell on the stairs. I was fed up with their selfish behavior that seemed to last forever. Thinking about enduring this situation until my daughter was grown up, about 20 years from now, left me speechless. And finally, I let out my feelings to them unrestrained. "I can't take it anymore. Please, let's get a divorce." The words I had hesitated to say just flowed out of me this time. It must have been because I was so distressed. There was a moment of silence that followed. Both of them stared at me with wide eyes. But the next moment, my husband and mother-in-law burst out laughing. "Divorce? You're after my money, aren't you? Just so you know, you won't get a dime of my assets if we divorce." "That's right, and if we do divorce, you should take our daughter with you. I don't want a granddaughter like her anyway." Thinking that I, a jobless woman, couldn't possibly divorce, they continued to disregard their own words and actions. They smirked and laughed as they left the hospital room, spouting insults at me. I then stroked my daughter's head, who was looking at me worriedly. I had finally brought up divorce. Though I was concerned about depriving my daughter of her father, it was more important to remove her from such a toxic environment. Unable to leave my daughter with my husband and mother-in-law who had just left, I reluctantly called my parents who lived in a distant area. It had been a while since I heard my parents' voices. I told them I might be getting a divorce, about my fracture, and that I wanted to leave my daughter with them until the divorce was finalized. My parents sounded alarmed and immediately said they would come over. They quickly booked plane tickets and made their way to the hospital. "Kelly, are you okay?" When my parents arrived in the hospital room, they looked at me and my daughter with concern. As I detailed what my husband and mother-in-law had done, my parents had stern expressions on their faces. I couldn't stop crying as I talked. "You've endured so much, but I wish you had reached out to us sooner. You are always our precious child. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad." I was relieved that my parents listened to my story. But it must have been hard for them to tolerate their child being treated so poorly. After asking me to wait a bit, they left and actually went to confront my in-laws. When they returned, they shared what had happened at my in-laws' house. My father-in-law was there too, having returned from work, and after hearing everything from my parents, he immediately apologized. "I am truly sorry for hurting your precious daughter." Then, he turned to my husband and mother-in-law, visibly angry. "What are you doing? Did you enjoy bullying my daughter-in-law while I was away? I didn't raise a son to be such a disgrace. And you, behaving like this as a wife, embarrass me. What do you think of your granddaughter? Rejecting her because she isn't a boy or because you think she isn't cute, what right do you have? It seemed that my father-in-law was genuinely angry, but my mother-in-law and husband showed no signs of remorse and kept making excuses. Every time they opened their mouths, it was to blame me and absolve themselves of any wrongdoing. Seeing that they remained unrepentant even after being scolded, my parents were utterly dismayed. They then told me to go ahead with the divorce and expressed their support for my decision. After a short hospital stay, I was discharged, and with the divorce papers in hand, I headed straight to my in-laws' house. Determined to focus only on my daughter and avoid any further involvement with my husband and mother-in-law, I went to their house to express my intention to divorce. When I did, my husband suddenly exploded in anger and started yelling at me. You were actually serious about getting a divorce? How can you even divorce without a job? It's terrible that you involved your parents in this mess. And it's your fault that Dad scolded me. He ranted and attacked me with his words. It's because of your own actions that you got scolded. You reap what you sow. Just sign this because I'm getting a divorce anyway. I maintained my composure and stood firm. It was childish of my husband to blame me for getting scolded when it was his fault. As I pressed the issue of divorce, my mother-in-law grabbed my arm and shook it violently. Kelly, you must have charmed Dad. I can't let my guard down around you. You're the worst. That's not true at all. Let go of my arm. I shook off my mother-in-law's grip, and then my husband glared at me. Just as my mother-in-law raised her hand to strike, my father-in-law intervened loudly. Hey! What are you doing? His shout made my husband and mother-in-law shrink back. Even I was a bit frightened by the rare anger shown by my usually gentle father-in-law. In the ensuing silence, my husband was sweating and fell silent, while my mother-in-law began to tremble, baring her teeth and clenching her back teeth with tears welling up in her eyes. She was staring at my father-in-law. Why do you always take her side? You are my husband, you should be on my side. You must be charmed by this younger woman, that's it. She shrieked at my father-in-law, attacking him. It was all just baseless accusations, but she didn't stop. Disgusted, my father-in-law retorted. Why can't you see anything beyond your own perspective? I am stopping you because what you are doing and saying is wrong. Take a moment to reflect on your own words and actions. Despite my father-in-law's words, my mother-in-law was so enraged that she couldn't be calmed. Shut up. You should just be on my side. If you preach at me anymore, I'll sue you for emotional abuse. Then she began throwing dishes and glasses, starting a rampage. Both my husband and I watched in dismay as my mother-in-law lost control. Seeing his own mother break down, my husband started to lose it too. Are you kidding me? It's your fault. You're a curse. Get out of my sight now. He yelled those words. I was scared, but I remained firm and said, I won't leave until you sign the divorce papers. With bloodshot eyes, my husband violently signed the divorce papers. I quickly collected the papers and bowed to my father-in-law. Father-in-law, I truly appreciate all you've done for me. You've supported and saved me many times. Thank you so much. I expressed my gratitude to my father-in-law and immediately left the house. The signed divorce papers were successfully processed, and the divorce was finalized. Now, I could finally get away from my husband and mother-in-law. Though relieved, just divorcing was not enough to settle my feelings. I returned to my parents' home, apologized for the inconvenience I would cause for a while, and then began preparations to sue for damages with a lawyer. After being treated so badly, I figured I had every right to get back at them. I presented the voice recorder I had used as a safeguard and the records of my visits to the psychiatrist as proof of the emotional stress caused by their abuse. I was told that it was possible to make a lump sum demand for damages from my husband and mother-in-law. After suffering so much, I nodded vigorously, as if avenging years of torment, and proceeded to file for damages. Life has been quiet since the divorce. But about a week after returning to my parents' house, my smartphone started ringing repeatedly. The caller ID showed my husband, or rather, my ex-husband. Since the divorce was finalized, the only remaining interactions concerning alimony and child support should be handled through my lawyer, so there was no need for me to answer his calls. Initially, I ignored the calls, but they kept coming without a break. After much hesitation due to the incessant calls, I reluctantly answered the phone. Hello? Kelly, please help! Ken is in big trouble. It was my mother-in-law's voice on the other end. Sounding panicked. I could hear Ken's yelling and a man shouting in the background. As I managed to get the situation from her, it seemed that Ken, upset about being sued for alimony and child support, had tried to storm my parents' home. However, due to his erratic behavior, he was stopped by a patrolling police officer for questioning. Agitated, Ken took an aggressive stance and ended up striking the officer. My mother-in-law was calling to try to prove that it was my fault for suing him, as she believed this triggered his breakdown. I could hear the argument between the police officer and my ex-husband over the phone. Come quickly and prove Ken isn't at fault. It's your responsibility for angering him. Her logic made no sense. I coldly responded, we're strangers now, it's none of my concern. My mother-in-law pleaded, please help. In a trembling voice, but I hung up without further discussion. I immediately set my phone to block her number. About a month later, my father-in-law contacted me to update me on Ken and my mother-in-law's situation. Ken had been arrested for assaulting a police officer and was subsequently fired from his job when his arrest became public knowledge. Now he is working part-time and using his savings to send child support and alimony. My mother-in-law, undeterred by the debacle she caused and trying to involve me in further trouble, faced a divorce proposal from my father-in-law due to her actions. The lies my mother-in-law had spread to demean me were exposed by my father-in-law, and as a result, she left, shunned by the neighbors. Currently, my ex-husband and she are living a meager life together in an apartment. On the other hand, I've successfully found a new job and am now enjoying happy days with my daughter. With the ties to my ex-husband and mother-in-law cut, my daughter's smile has increased. She's making lots of friends at preschool and excitedly tells me about her day. I plan to keep working hard to protect this smile of my daughter and create many more memories together. Here you go. Use this to order some takeout or something. Hey, how much cash do you have on you right now? Huh? Cash? You should have some stashed away for emergencies, right? How much do you have in total? I wondered why he was asking such a question, it wasn't any of his business. I thought that, but there was no need to hide anything. About $20,000, I guess. It's all in the safe. As I said that, he grinned and left his room. Wait a minute, where is he going? I didn't want to believe it, but there's no way he would do such a thing. There's absolutely no way he would steal money from me again. I wanted to believe that, but he headed straight to my room. Could he be trying to steal my money? The thought made my skin crawl, and in a panic, I hurriedly moved my wheelchair back to my room. There, he already had the safe open and was holding the cash. I generally use the same password for everything, like on my phone, so he probably knew it. Wait a minute, what are you thinking? Leave the money and go back to your room. Yeah, right, like I'd say that? Actually, we're all going on a trip now. I'm gonna blow it all there. What are you talking about? If you want money for a trip, there are ways to ask. Taking it like this is just like stealing. Doesn't really matter, does it? It ends up being for me anyway, and since I'm still a minor, you, being my parent, have the responsibility to take care of me. Well, since you're just a fake parent, you probably don't feel that responsibility anyway. The word fake parent tore at my heart. Of course, I had to be angry about him trying to steal the money, and indeed, I was angry. But until now, even though we hadn't communicated well, I had continued to support him in many ways. To be called a fake parent just like that. Why are you crying? It's kinda creepy. As he said that, his eyes changed, and he started approaching me. This is bad, he might do something. Instinctively, my fear skyrocketed and my heartbeat surged. I didn't know what he was going to do, but I tensed up all over and averted my eyes from him. But then, in the next moment, with a loud crash, my body was slammed to the floor. He had kicked my wheelchair hard. Ouch! What are you doing? If I take this part off, now your wheelchair is useless. You're paralyzed in both legs, right? Wonder if you'll last until Dad gets home. This is bad. He no longer had the eyes of a human. What he was doing was purely demonic. Next, he took my phone and left the house. What should I do? My husband is on a business trip, and if I'm left like this. As I battled this terror, 5 hours passed, and then the front door opened. My name is Sally. I'm currently 35 years old and living at my parents' home. I'm not working at a company, and at 35, living at home, many might wonder what I'm doing with my life. I was in a car accident 3 years ago, which left me paralyzed in both legs. Since then, I've been unable to live alone, and though it's a burden, I've been receiving care at my parents' home. Mom, could you drive me to the station this Saturday? I can do it in the evening. Are you going out to eat with friends? Yeah, something like that. Even at this age, it's embarrassing to talk about romantic interests with my parents. So I dodged the topic with my friends, but actually, I was going to have dinner with someone I was introduced to. They already knew I used a wheelchair and lived at home, but I was still worried about whether they would accept me. Even if there was mutual interest and we started dating, they would be signing up for a life far removed from that of a typical woman. I can't bathe alone or go anywhere by myself. I can't fully manage household chores either. Only someone very understanding could accept all of this, otherwise, I couldn't imagine getting married. But nothing starts if I don't take action, and I must value opportunities to meet people. I made sure to stay positive, so I geared up and went. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming today. I'm glad we could meet. I've interacted with the opposite sex a few times at work, but often, when they see me in a wheelchair, their faces stiffen, and the conversation doesn't flow well, sometimes not even exchanging contact information. But this person genuinely accepted me, and we had a great conversation. If you'd like, let's go out for a meal again sometime. I have a car, so I can pick you up anytime. Really? Please do take me out again. Though we had only gone out for a meal once, we clicked immediately, and it didn't take long for our relationship to turn romantic. After 2 years of dating, we were nearing the point of marriage. We were both over 30, a good age to marry. Since we had been dating with marriage in mind from the start, people around us seemed to think we'd tie the knot soon, but both of us hadn't managed to bring up marriage yet. Part of it was because I'm in a wheelchair, but that wasn't the only issue. Look, I'm at an age where I want to settle down. I'm not trying to rush you, but I just want to know what you think. We both have our situations, so I'm ready to accept whatever you think. Well, of course, I want to get married. But I haven't talked to my son about you yet. I don't know if he'll accept it. Plus, if you marry me, it won't just be the two of us. Yes, he has a child from his previous marriage. I'm not looking for someone who's never been divorced, and it's not unusual for someone of a certain age to have been divorced once. I see it as part of life experience, and I think people who have been through a failed marriage might make better partners because they've learned from their mistakes. I think they can lead a more stable life because of what they've learned from their failures. So, I don't have a bias against divorce, but there was no guarantee his child would accept me. Of course, I'm willing to make an effort, and it's not that I don't want to marry him because he has a child. I'd even like to be a great mom, but I'm in a wheelchair, and he has a child, so there were many issues to sort out before we could marry. After 6 months of discussions, we finally decided to marry. We agreed to overcome any challenges together, no matter what they might be. From now on, let's be a family, okay? Yeah. His son is 14 years old. Being in the middle of adolescence, and having lived with his father alone until now, anyone would be confused suddenly having to live with a woman in a wheelchair as family. However, I made sure to communicate as much as possible early on to connect with him. But he hardly accepted me, and when his father wasn't around, he would ignore me even if I tried to speak to him. I didn't expect us to get along immediately, but even after a year, and then another, his attitude hadn't changed at all. However, there were times when he did speak to me. It was when he was asking for money again. "I'm going out with friends, can you give me $200? "What? Again? I just gave you money last week. You don't need that much just to hang out with friends, do you?" "I need it, so I'm asking for it." "Are you trying to control what I do?" "It's annoying. You don't even know how we hang out these days, so could you stop butting in?" "I'm not trying to restrict what you do, but isn't that a bit much? If you're spending $200 every time, think about how much that adds up to in a month." "You promised me, right? You said you'd do anything for me. Was that just talk?" When he said that, I couldn't respond. I know I've been too lenient. Continuing like this would only encourage his behavior. It's absurd for a kid to spend $200 in one go, and if that's really how he's spending it, I should probably set some boundaries. But if I take a hard stance now, I wonder if he'll ever open up to me. Maybe we'll never have a good relationship, and that thought has kept me from taking decisive action. I couldn't talk to my husband about it, and I stayed silent, but I knew it was time to stop this. While I do have a stable income, so money isn't the issue. Considering his development and our future relationship, I decided it was time to start being stricter. Then, one day. "Hey! What are you doing with my purse?" "Nothing much." "Wait a minute." After I finished eating in the living room and went back to my room, there he was, tampering with my purse. He was startled by my voice and quickly left the room, but I noticed money was missing from the purse. I hadn't been very attentive to the amount of money in my purse, but perhaps he had been stealing money before. Lately, I noticed his clothes and accessories had become more luxurious. He was already in high school and coming home late, so maybe he had a job. He hadn't told me anything, so I assumed he was shopping with money he earned, but maybe he was splurging with my money. Because there was no proof, I couldn't confront him about it, but it was clear this time he had taken some money from my purse. I couldn't let this go, so I decided to talk to my husband as soon as he got home. "I don't know if this is the first time, but I don't think I can just let this go like nothing happened. Maybe you could talk to him? I don't think he listens to anything I say. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I never thought he would do something like this. I thought we hadn't crossed that line either." Looking back, I should have mentioned how he always asks for money when he goes out. Given how careless he is with money, maybe sharing everything would have been better. But I didn't want to make the problem too big and be disliked by him. I wanted to handle it as calmly as possible. I think that's how I felt deep down. The next day, my husband talked to him, and after that, he wouldn't even look me in the eye. Gradually, he started going out less, and it didn't turn into a bigger problem. He was nearing his SAT and probably didn't have the time to go out anymore. He was basically home every day studying and preparing for SAT. He still wouldn't communicate with me at all, and I don't know if he will live on his own once he starts college, but it seems unlikely we'll ever get along. Well, maybe it's fine to just enjoy living with my husband from now on. I started to think that way. About 6 months later, he successfully got into his first choice university. It was a private school with quite high tuition, but we were truly happy for him. "Congratulations on your acceptance. All your hard work has paid off." "Ah, it's none of your business, right? Don't bother me with trivial stuff." Not that it's trivial to me, though. I hadn't said it out loud, but deep down, I had hoped he would get into his first choice. I hadn't expected him to say that, but well, what matters is the result. If he's happy he got into his first choice university, then that's enough for me. I didn't have much desire to get along with him anymore. And so, he started going out with friends again and seemed to be enjoying his time until graduation. That's part of youth, and I guess I have to provide some money if needed, I thought. My husband was away on a business trip for 2 nights and 3 days, leaving just me and my stepson at home. He doesn't like the food I cook. I went to give him some money for takeout. Then, I said, "Here you go. Use this to order some takeout or something." "Hey, how much cash do you have on you right now?" "Huh? Cash? You should have some stashed away for emergencies, right? How much do you have in total?" I wondered why he was asking such a question. It wasn't any of his business. I thought that, but there was no need to hide anything. I had been stolen from once before, but after talking to my husband about it, there had been no such behavior, and I had come to trust him somewhat. He was just a kid, probably just a moment of temptation back then. That's all I thought it was. So I didn't suspect anything this time. About $20,000, I guess. It's all in the safe. As I said that, he grinned and left his room. I didn't want to believe it, but there's no way he would do such a thing. There's absolutely no way he would steal money from me again. I wanted to believe that, but he headed straight to my room. Could he be trying to steal my money? The thought made my skin crawl, and in a panic, I hurriedly moved my wheelchair back to my room. There, he already had the safe open and was holding the cash. I generally use the same password for everything, like on my phone, so he probably knew it. "Wait a minute, what are you thinking? Leave the money and go back to your room." Yeah, right, like I'd say that? Actually, we're all going on a trip now. I'm gonna blow it all there. What are you talking about? If you want money for a trip, there are ways to ask. Taking it like this is just like stealing. Doesn't really matter, does it? It ends up being for me anyway, and since I'm still a minor, you, being my parent, have the responsibility to take care of me. Well, since you're just a fake parent, you probably don't feel that responsibility anyway. The word fake parent tore at my heart. Of course, I had to be angry about him trying to steal the money, and indeed, I was angry. But until now, even though we hadn't communicated well, I had continued to support him in many ways. He was able to go out freely because I was the one providing the money. Of course, financial support was paramount, but I had always cared about him beyond just the finances. To be called a fake parent just like that. What have I been striving for all these years? To think that this is how he sees me, all the while I've been supporting him on my own. At that thought, I couldn't find the words to speak, and tears started to flow. Why are you crying? It's kinda creepy. To think that you felt this way. Why are you playing the victim? You married Dad and got a good life, you should be grateful. I've been putting up with this too, so I deserve at least this much money. And I'm sick of you, so can you just disappear? He said this and his eyes changed as he approached me. This is bad, something might happen. Instinctively, my fear skyrocketed and my heartbeat surged. I didn't know what he was going to do, but I tensed up all over and averted my eyes from him, but then, in the next moment, with a loud crash, my body was slammed to the floor. He had kicked my wheelchair hard. Ouch, what are you doing? If I disable this, now your wheelchair is useless. You're paralyzed in both legs, right? Wonder if you'll last until Dad gets back. This is bad, he no longer had the eyes of a human. What he was doing was purely demonic. Was he planning to leave me stranded until my husband returned? While it's not a life or death situation, this harassment is way out of line. You think this is forgivable? I don't need to be forgiven. Also, I'm taking your phone. Hey! Give it back! If Dad finds out, it won't end well for me. Well, I'll leave it on the table. If you can move, go get it yourself. With that, he put my phone on the table, grabbed his things, and left the house. What should I do now? Of course, my husband would be back once his business trip ended, so I didn't believe my life was in danger for just that period. But I can't even go to the bathroom by myself, I could end up dehydrated. Without my wheelchair, I'm completely immobile. What was he thinking? Doesn't he know the difference between right and wrong? No, I should have realized it the day he stole money from my purse. His true nature. Maybe I turned a blind eye to reality because he's my husband's son and I wanted to get along. But it's too late for regrets now. I have to do something about this situation. But I felt powerless. I just broke down and cried. About 5 hours must have passed when I heard, "I'm home." What? No way. My husband was supposed to be away for 2 nights and 3 days, but he had come back early. I wasn't expecting him so soon, and relief washed over me, making me cry again. I was so relieved I wouldn't be left alone for days. I was truly relieved. I didn't know why my husband had returned, but I was just glad he did. However, my wheelchair was broken, and there I was, lying on the floor, crying. Seeing this situation, my husband, perhaps in a panic, rushed over without even taking off his shoes. "What on earth happened here?" "I'm so glad, really glad. Thank you." My husband asked what had happened, but all I could feel was relief that he was back. He hugged me and carried me to a chair in the living room. For a while, I just cried and couldn't talk, but he stayed by my side, comforting me. "I'm sorry for just crying. But why did you come back so early?" "The meeting with the client got cancelled, so I came back earlier. But I was shocked to find you like this." "What exactly happened?" "Well, actually, after some time had passed and I had calmed down, I told my husband everything from start to finish. Then my husband hugged me again and apologized many times. However, it wasn't his fault. He didn't need to apologize, but at the same time, he was quite angry. I don't know what he was thinking to do such a thing, but I'm really sorry. Above all, I'm glad you're safe. Maybe he has always seen me as an obstacle. Maybe he saw this as a chance to just take the money and do this. But I can't just let this go. I'll make sure he faces the consequences, so don't worry." I was relieved that my husband was truly on my side. Thinking about it calmly, I was not at fault at all, and it would have been absurd if my husband hadn't supported me, but that's how mentally cornered I had felt over the past few hours. For now, my husband fixed my wheelchair, and we discussed what to do next. He wasn't just going to let this go by just being angry. I also had my own thoughts. I didn't know how long he planned to be away on his trip, but from the next day, we decided to take action. He returned a week later, probably having had a good time with the money he stole from me. But the fun ends here. "I'm home." "Welcome back, here you go." "What? What is this?" What my husband was holding was the university withdrawal form. He had planned to make the last memories before enjoying campus life at his first-choice university, but a person who had betrayed someone like this shouldn't be allowed to enjoy such a life. After discussing with my husband, we decided to withdraw his university enrollment. Of course, the enrollment fee wouldn't be refunded, but we intended to charge all of it to him. This decision was made because I had planned to pay for his university expenses. My husband had been doing the household chores I couldn't manage, and I had made some investments with a decent return. I was supposed to pay for his university tuition. I hadn't told him that, but my husband had given me full decision-making authority regarding the university. So when I told him that I didn't want to pay for him to go to college, he accepted it without hesitation. "You think someone as low as you can go to college? You're mistaken. College is for decent people. I don't have a cent for you, and you're going to pay back the enrollment fee and the money you squandered." "Wait. Come on, stop it, please." "Stop it? This is just a color copy. The real one has already been submitted and accepted." "What?" I'll never forget the look on his face at that moment. He looked like he had tasted the despair of this world, but the despair I had experienced was far worse. How could he make such a face just because he couldn't go to college? Doesn't he understand what he has done? He stole a large sum of $20,000, leaving me, who couldn't move at all, alone. If he thought he could get away with that, he should start over from kindergarten. "It's already been accepted. What about all the hard work I did for the college? Was all the time I spent studying desperately a waste?" Yes. Everything you did was indeed a waste. Are you kidding me? Are you even a parent? To push your own son into this corner, what kind of pleasure do you get from this? You're no different from a devil. Who are you to talk? You're the one who did something devil-like. All that's happening is that your actions are coming back to haunt you. I don't understand how you can be so outrageously defiant. And to be honest, what I suffered was far worse. You got off easy just having to withdraw from college. You should be grateful, in fact. What do you think would happen if I locked you in a room with a closed key for a week without providing anything? I think I would be justified in doing that much. You probably don't realize what you've done, but this was definitely the limit of my patience. Do you not understand what you've done? Shut up. First of all, you are the root cause of all this. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened to me. Get lost, damn it. Really, it seems he only thinks about himself. As long as he's fine, nothing else matters. Honestly, it's heartbreaking for my husband. As an only son, I think he was raised with great care. After the divorce from his first wife, he raised his son alone until he was 14. Balancing parenting and work, I think he had very little money or time for himself. To have raised him like that and then to be betrayed in this way. If you're not going to show any remorse, that's fine. We don't expect anything from you after you cross the line. However, you will repay all the money you used and the enrollment fee. After that, we'll sever ties. Please respect this one request. What are you saying? So in the end, you betray me too. You're not a father, I'm disappointed. Well, you can feel disappointed or whatever you like. I don't feel anything about what someone I'm going to cut ties with thinks of me. It's just sad that no apology ever came from you in the end. When my husband said that, he clenched his teeth and went back to his room. The door slammed shut with a loud bang, but true to my husband's words, not a single word of apology came to the end. He probably doesn't think he did anything wrong. I guess he won't understand unless it's done to him, because he shows no signs of reflection. It makes me question his humanity, but neither my husband nor I have any expectations of him now. Within a month, we told him he needed to move out, and he spent his days not speaking to us at all. Feeling completely abandoned by us and realizing he had no place in this home, he left the house about a week later. Where he's living or if he has a job, I don't know, and frankly, I'm not even interested. He's free to do as he pleases, that was our thinking. Then, one day after a year had passed. Right, I wouldn't want to bring it up, but I managed to get back the money he squandered and the enrollment fee from that foolish son. What? I thought that money was gone for good, especially since he seemed unrepentant. I thought he would just leave it at that. I thought so too, but I didn't want to let him get away with it as if nothing happened. I found out where he was and persuaded him to return it. My husband isn't quick to anger, but he has a strong sense of justice. His unyielding nature is probably why he persisted even after a year. Well, I'm surprised he managed to pay it back within a year. So what's he doing now? Is he working, or somehow managing to go to college? Well, he's crashed at a friend's place and seems to be involved in some shady business. Just as I thought, he wasn't working a regular job. I wasn't surprised at all. He could commit such acts without batting an eye, so I never thought he was living properly. Getting caught doing something strange or messing up his life, it's none of my business. I think he should do as he pleases, but I was worried about my husband. For my husband, he will always be his only son, and even though we declared a separation a year ago, it's not really possible to completely sever the parent-child bond. So, I wondered if seeing his son so fallen didn't pain his heart? A year has passed, and I worried whether his anger had subsided and affection had taken its place. Are you okay? He will always be your son, after all. What are you talking about? I don't consider him family anymore. But you are the victim here, yet you are so kind-hearted. But rest assured, I just can't forgive him. The moment I see his face, the anger from a year ago wells up, an overwhelming emotion. I've completely severed ties with him, and that fact won't change, so don't worry. It was reassuring just to hear him say that. A year has passed and my own wounds have healed enough to say this, but if my husband ever wanted to reconcile and be close with his son again as a father and child, I think I couldn't stop him. I believe that the bond between a parent and child is unbreakable. However, if my husband himself has shown such concern for me and is a man of strong principles, I should respect his decisions. Of course, if that boy seeks our help in the future, I won't respond, and if my husband intends to do the same, we will sever ties. From now on, I plan to live a long life together with my husband as a couple. I will continue to cherish my husband. Marriage means supporting and helping each other, no matter the circumstances. However, at this age, everyone understands that sometimes that's just a nice sentiment. Giving up on understanding and supporting each other would indeed mean there's no point in being married. A year ago, my husband helped me without hesitation and has continued to be on my side ever since. He cherishes me above all, and I intend to reciprocate that care. Don't slack off claiming you feel unwell, you lousy wife. When you come to your parents' house, you better clean, cook and work. My mother-in-law yells at me with a piercing voice while I have a fever. And there's my husband, just giggling and watching TV. If you have something to say, just say it. When I glared at my mother-in-law involuntarily, that's what she told me. Really? Well then, let me speak my mind. My name is Samantha. I'm a 28-year-old. It's been a year since I married Mike, and I already regret this marriage in many ways. What do I regret, you ask? First off, my husband takes his job too lightly. Before we got married, he neither worked overtime nor went out for drinks. I thought he was someone who valued family. But after getting married, I realized he was just lazy. The reason he doesn't do overtime is simply that he doesn't want to work. No matter how busy it gets or how much the clients are in trouble, he doesn't care. He leaves work because he wants to go home. I mean, I would understand if there were no overtime pay or if he worked at a significantly exploitative company, but his company prioritizes the well-being of its employees. They definitely pay for overtime. And you can take paid leave. If there's a pileup of work, everyone helps each other out. Especially these days, working too much isn't good, so there's hardly any overtime. But still, there are times when work piles up, and sometimes you just have to do it. I work too, so I think doing some overtime when it's reasonable is fine, but watching my husband who absolutely refuses to do any makes me wonder if I'm outdated. But still, it bothers me. My husband says overtime is a waste of time. The client is in trouble? That's none of my business. I can't understand the feelings of colleagues who do overtime, but they might as well earn my salary for me. He looks down on customers and colleagues with such remarks. He thinks it's a loss to work. How to slack off and take it easy is what matters, he says. Seeing my husband like this makes me really pull back, though I keep it to myself. I'm not saying he should work. I just hate how he looks down on and laughs at people who do their best. I'm the type who will do overtime if needed, so I guess we're just not compatible. Well, I think it's normal for married couples to have different values. We've walked different paths in life. It's rarer to think exactly the same. But I wish he'd stop saying things like "you just don't get it." He always thinks he's right. Before we got married, it wasn't like this, but marriage changes people, or rather, it reveals their true nature. Even cleaning, he'll swipe his finger to gather dust and say, "What's this?" like he's some kind of stepmother from Cinderella. And when I prepare dinner exhausted from work, he says, "Take more time and make it properly." This radish isn't even seasoned well. I feel like dunking him in soy sauce and stewing him. No, I'm seriously an adult, so I wouldn't do that. Before we got married, he used to say, "Any food is fine as long as it's edible." I'm just grateful that you cook. Is this what they mean by "don't feed a fish once you've caught it"? Can you please release me back to the sea now? But as much as I list his bad points, there's no end to it. I have plenty of flaws too, and I've changed a lot since before we got married. Before, well, let's just say I have a past I can't even tell my husband about. And surely, he has complaints about me too. It's mutual, and that's what marriage is about, adjusting to each other. If that's impossible, then there's no arguing against don't get married. But above all, there's one fault of my husband I can't forgive. That's the presence of my mother-in-law. Yes, for many wives out there, the mother-in-law can be the toughest challenge in marriage. Not all mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships are good, unfortunately, ours isn't. My mother-in-law has a very strong personality. Even though it was my day off yesterday, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced. There I was, all dressed up for shopping, and I just froze at the doorway. And of course, we couldn't go out as planned. It's only been a year since I got married, and I don't have the guts to stand up to my mother-in-law yet. A complainer at work is one thing, but a mother-in-law type of complainer is something you can't just brush off as a wife. And our complainer is the classic mother-in-law. Let me give you an idea with yesterday's episode. First, she shows up without an appointment and glares, "You were planning to go out even though I came?" Then my husband chimes in, "Right, Mom's here, so let's cancel our plans." What? I'm shocked, and my husband looks confused, like, did he say something weird? "Yes, Mike is such a thoughtful son to his mother," she says with a triumphant look. "What's with this mother and son?" Then, giving up, I served some coffee, and she snapped, "What's this coffee? The one I just bought from the supermarket tastes better," and she throws away my coffee. But when my husband serves the same coffee I made, oh, this is delicious. Coffee served by my son is just special. How does the taste change just by being served by him? Is it magic? Does your son have magic to change the flavors? Then she goes, "What a mess this room is. You can't even clean, you lousy wife," and starts tidying up on her own. But when my husband says, "Mom, I know where everything is, it's not a mess," she stops and goes, "Oh, I thought there was some kind of system to it." What system does she see in the crumbs on the floor and the beer cans scattered on the living room table? And if I cook, here comes the classic, "How can anyone eat this?" Poor Mike, having to eat this every day. "I'll cook something tasty for you," she says mockingly, and then the two of them go out to eat. Yeah, right, like you cook. What do you think, folks? Did you enjoy my sharp retorts to this mother-son duo? No, wait. What do you think of this bizarre mother-son relationship? A mother-in-law who can't let go. A husband who can't detach from his mom. By the way, my husband thinks men are eternally like boys, and wanders around the room in just his underwear. Do boys walk around in just their underwear? Well, that's marriage for you. All these things you don't see until you're married, it's just too much and confusing. I bet many wonder what's so good about my husband. I, myself, have started to lose sight of his good traits. Yet, without feeding the fish you've caught, maybe it's about using carrots and sticks, because occasionally my husband turns sweet. Thanks for always being there. I bought some cake, let's eat. It's these little thoughtful moments that make me unable to hate him. I know he's easy to manipulate. But isn't everyone happy when treated kindly? So, despite many negatives, I swore to God to stick with this man, and here we are as a married couple. However, a year into marriage, the sweetness and kindness of the honeymoon phase are gone. Lately, my husband goes out alone more often. Even if I'm not feeling well. There was a time when he would care for me when I caught a cold. Now it's like, "You're not feeling well? Okay, rest and sleep well," followed by, "I've got plans with my buddies, so I'm off. Don't worry about dinner for me, bye." Even if he goes out, what's this about not needing dinner? If he had no plans, was he expecting me to cook despite being ill? What about my dinner? Press a button on the pressure cooker and soup is ready? Oh, isn't that just too convenient, it almost brings tears to my eyes. Indeed, there are a variety of home appliances. I wish my pressure cooker would say, "Your soup is ready. Please enjoy your meal and rest well." No. Oh, I see, my appliances are not living in the future yet. As a woman, I often feel unwell, not just with colds but with the heaviness of the monthly cycle. Maybe that's why my husband has gotten used to it and doesn't worry much anymore. Is it too much to ask for just a simple "Are you okay?" from him? As time goes by, it will soon be 2 years of marriage, and my husband has completely started to ignore me. I'm going to watch a baseball game with a buddy from college today. What, you're going out again? My husband often goes out with friends on his days off. But that's not all. My mom is coming over, so please take care of her, he says, dumping the responsibility on me whenever his parents visit. And of course, the unannounced visits from my mother-in-law continue as usual. Even when she shows up as he's about to leave, he just says, "Samantha's here, so have some fun with her over tea," and leaves. He used to enjoy his mother's visits so much. Apparently, he's now thoroughly enjoying hanging out with friends, almost like he's reverted to being single. My mother-in-law seems unhappy about him going out too, and she doubles down on her sarcastic comments during such times. "Samantha, it's because you make such funny faces that Mike prefers to go out." What kind of comment is that? I'd rather be called ugly, at least that would be less offensive. What does she mean by funny faces? Lately, I've become stronger, so I retorted, "Oh, come on. Maybe Mike goes out because your eyebrows look unique, which is quite amusing." Oh dear, Samantha. So our days are filled with these mysterious laughs and sparks flying. I'd love to put my husband between those sparks and turn his head into an explosion like in a failed science experiment. Why do husbands always run away from mother-in-law and daughter-in-law battles? Since my mother-in-law shows up unexpectedly, I think it's okay not to visit his parents' home twice a year and during Oban, but it seems that's not an option. There's also the rarely seen father-in-law and the chance to meet my brother-in-law's family. So, I guess it can't be helped. But I do wish he'd spare me when I'm not feeling well. Just when it's time to visit his parents tomorrow, I've come down with a high fever. "I have a fever, can you go by yourself tomorrow?" I asked my husband, and he replied, "Why?" "If it means going alone, I won't go either," I thought he meant, but then he said, "A fever is no big deal. Let's go." What is with this man and his casual "let's go"? No, in today's times, you shouldn't take a high fever lightly. Your brother has small kids, it would actually be a nuisance. That's okay. Turns out my brother can't make it, we'll visit some other time. What? My brother-in-law lives far away. In contrast, our home is close enough for my mother-in-law to make sudden visits. Then how about we go when your brother's family is also visiting? If my brother-in-law's family is there, my mother-in-law's nagging lessens. It's still there, but it's more bearable, and I can team up with my sister-in-law, which has helped us get by so far. Going alone is just too much. Yet my husband is oblivious to my feelings and lacks empathy for my illness. What are you talking about? Mom's really looking forward to us visiting. When my brother comes, we can go then too, but this time let's just go, the two of us. Why does he want to go to his parents' home so badly? What's so enjoyable about it? Especially since she often pops into our place unannounced? What's there to look forward to? I don't get it. Anyway, what's impossible is impossible. I feel like I'm going to throw up, I said as I lay down, but then my husband's chop hit me on the back of my head. What the heck? Illness is all in the mind. What? Listen, you think you're feeling terrible because you have a fever. You can overcome anything with willpower. Just keep telling yourself, you're okay. Huh? No, it's not the kind of fever that goes down with willpower. Put some willpower into it. Are you crazy? Eventually, our argument continued, and I couldn't rest properly. My fever, far from going down, actually went up. Despite my constant protests that it was impossible, my husband forcefully pushed me, utterly exhausted, into the car. In the end, he had to carry me into it. At least make it a princess carry. But that's hardly the issue here. I feel sick. I was seconds away from throwing up, desperately trying not to vomit in the car. 10 minutes later, as soon as the car pulled up to my in-laws' house, I bolted from the car and, barely greeting anyone, rushed to the bathroom. "What, were you looking forward to coming here that much?" were my husband's words to me as I stumbled out of the bathroom, drained. I wanted to punch him with a phantom left hook. But I was in no condition for such actions, feeling absolutely dreadful. I quickly made the greetings and thought about calling a taxi to just go home. That's when my father-in-law, always overshadowed by my vivid mother-in-law and my husband, kindly asked, "Are you all right?" He's very different from the other two, actually a very kind person. Seeing how pale I was, he expressed his concern. "You must hydrate after vomiting. Here, drink this unopened electrolyte solution," he offered, handing me a bottle. At this moment, I wanted to worship my father-in-law as a god. But just as I was about to drink, the bottle was snatched from the side. I turned to see my mother-in-law standing there, glaring. "Hi." Before I could say anything, she snapped, "Don't be so spoiled." "What?" Before I knew it, she had put the bottle away. The rule is clear: when a daughter-in-law comes to her in-law's house, she has chores to do. "What?" "What rule?" As I looked puzzled, she pointed sharply towards the bathroom. "Start with cleaning the bathroom. How dare you use it without asking first?" "But I did ask your husband for permission before I entered." "It's not just your husband living here. You should have asked me too." "I'm sorry." I didn't argue further as I felt I might leak something if I did. However, I was in no condition to clean the bathroom, yet my mother-in-law wouldn't stop talking. "After you're done cleaning, start preparing the meal." "What? I'm really not feeling well today." "What do you mean you're not feeling well? It's just your face that looks bad." What is she even saying? Sorry for having a bad face. And remember, a daughter-in-law isn't a guest. Get moving and prepare some tea at least. Trying to slack off, what a useless wife you are. Get moving, fulfill your duties. "But work, you lazy wife." My mother-in-law's shouting exploded. The piercing voice resonated in my head, which was already dizzy and aching from the fever. Glancing sideways, I saw my husband lounging and watching TV in the living room. "Hey Mike, I'm really not feeling well." I called for help, but he replied, "Oh, I've got a temperature of 99.6 degrees Fahrenheit too, and my head hurts because I used too much hair product, but I'm fine." You'll be fine too, right? Illness is all in the mind. Come on, you can do it. Seriously? 99.6 degrees Fahrenheit is a normal temperature. Too much hair product? What's that about? At that moment, as I felt my limits approaching, my mother-in-law started screeching again. "Hey, are you listening? Hurry up and make the coffee and clean up. And you need to go to the supermarket too." Is she joking? Just as I thought that, I heard a tiny snap in the back of my mind. I sighed deeply. Without responding to my mother-in-law, I glared at her while holding my aching head. If I looked annoyed, she glared back even harder. "What's this? You glare at your elders while being such a useless wife. If you have something to say it clearly." She probably thought I wouldn't stand up to her as usual. But everyone has their limits. And I had just surpassed mine. "Well then," I said quietly. Maybe it was the anger, but my headache seemed to ease a bit as I looked up. "Then, without any reservations, let me speak my mind, shall I?" The nerve of modern wives. What do you mean let me speak? You're a wife, you should just listen. You're the one who told me to speak clearly. When I shouted at her for being contradictory, my mother-in-law suddenly crumpled to the floor in shock. Before that, I had stomped my foot dramatically and stood with my arms crossed, looking down at her. "Samantha! What are you? You told me to speak up if I had something to say, didn't you?" "I did not say that." "You did say it, didn't you?" "Yes, I did." Refusing to let her conveniently forget her own words, I glared at her as she sat on the floor, then straightened her back to reply. "I may be patient now, But back when I was wild, I was quite a blunt woman who didn't hesitate to speak her mind. What? Caught off guard, both her eyes widened. I continued without care. There are things about my past that even my husband doesn't know. I had a wild, let's say delinquent, phase. A delinquent? Here's a photo as proof, and I pulled out a picture from my pocket. It showed a gang of tough-looking individuals sitting in a row on a road, all glaring fiercely at the camera. In the center was a particularly intimidating woman. This person looks like she could make a few people disappear, right? What, this dangerous-looking person? That's me. Pointing at the woman, my mother-in-law's finger trembled when I informed her it was me. Is this you, Samantha? Yes, it's me. How many people have you made disappear? How many do you think? No, I've never done such a thing, of course. But perhaps it's better to remain vague now, as her face contorted with fear. Should I give you a facial massage? That's quite all right. Having learned of my daunting past, my mother-in-law quickly shook her head in panic. Now that I've cleared the air, shall we talk? Having seen such a photo, I think it's time to revisit my old self. What? There are many things I'd like to say to you. So many. Yeah, I won't finish telling you all in a night. That much? But I'm not feeling well right now, so I won't say it all. Is that so? Relieved by my words, my mother-in-law visibly relaxed. But it's too early to feel safe. So, I'll just say what needs to be said. What? First, listen to people. What? I said I'm not feeling well. Listen to what people are telling you. What? Trying a tougher tone, her face quickly paled. Then you shouldn't have come. Your son dragged me here. At that, I casually turned my gaze towards the living room. There, peeking out from behind the sofa with eyes wide as saucers, was my husband, who had been anxiously watching since I started recounting my past. So, I summoned him over with a strong tone. Come here, you. Me? I'm kinda busy right now. Come here. Okay, I'm coming. Without a choice, he hurried over and knelt next to my mother-in-law. I stood with my arms crossed, facing him. What's with you? What do you mean? I've been sick since yesterday, haven't I? And what's this you'll be fine? Why do you decide I'm fine? Are you a doctor? Are you? No, I'm just a humble man. Right, an employee. Yes. So? What? You're saying you have a 99.6 degrees Fahrenheit fever and a headache because you used too much hair product? I'm totally fine now. Very energetic. Oh, so you're energetic, but just sitting there laughing while your sick wife is almost slaved around by your mother? Should we go shopping? Stay here. Yes. As my husband started to get up, I motioned with my chin for him not to flee, and he sat back down. Hey. Yes. My mother-in-law, now suddenly sitting up straight, responded sharply. Apparently understanding she was in a precarious situation. But it's too late for realizations now. Since you've said we should speak our minds without reservation, I'll go ahead. Your son's contract is terminated as of today. What? My mother-in-law tilted her head, not understanding. My husband also gave a puzzled huh? So I clarified for them. I've reached my limit. Actually, I've surpassed it. As of today, I want to terminate the contract of marriage. What? My husband exclaimed in shock. Does that mean divorce? That's right. No, I don't want that. I'll change, I'll be kinder. Please just don't divorce me. That's impossible. People's natures don't change that easily. I looked at him coldly. And he turned pale. Yeah, and just so you know, your employment contract is also terminated. What? I'll talk to Dad about it. Someone who can't treasure his wife can't possibly perform well at work either. Indeed, my husband went from pale to ashen. You see, my husband worked for the company my father runs. He met me when he transferred to my father's company. Constantly changing jobs and never sticking to one, he came to my father in desperation for work. My kind-hearted father hired him on the spot. And that was the beginning. However, he wasn't well regarded by other employees, and I had been covering for his incompetencies. In other words, the only reason he could work there was because of me. My father kept him employed because he is my husband. Otherwise, he would have been terminated long ago. That's a problem. Why? It's too late for me to find another job. His voice faded. That's right. You came to us desperate because you couldn't find another job, didn't you? That's right, so. So what? What? My husband, briefly relieved thinking he might avoid being fired, froze as he met my cold voice and stared. Our company isn't a charity. My father isn't so kind as to keep employing someone who can't do the bare minimum. But I've been. Until now, you had my support. Did you really notice nothing? Your performance wouldn't even match that of a part-timer. It's just helping out because I compensated for you. My husband believes that working is losing. And he mocks employees who voluntarily do overtime as foolish. Even though my father and I often stayed late, he would laugh at us. He wouldn't say it to our faces when it was us, but his comments about other employees working overtime were appalling. Working means losing. What's important is how much you can slack off. How could he say that in front of me, the company president's daughter? He must have thought I wouldn't tell my father, but of course, that's something I could never say. I knew how furious my father would be. But I have no obligation to protect my husband any further. I will inform my father about everything you've said. What? I will consult with a lawyer and proceed with the termination procedures. Wait, Samantha, I was wrong. Your face? What? Was it your face that was wrong? What are you talking about? That's extremely rude. That's what you say. While my mother-in-law watched our exchange dumbfounded, I turned the conversation to her. Suddenly startled, she exclaimed, "What? Your son says it's rude to speak ill of someone's face." That's true. You said my face was funny, didn't you? That was a compliment. Oh, really? It was definitely not a compliment. Anyway, I refuse to ruin my life by dealing with this family any longer. I will terminate the contract, and we will divorce. Wait, Samantha! No waiting! Divorce, and you're fired. Samantha! My husband tried to cling to me. As he became annoyingly persistent, I glared at him with the same menacing face I had in my delinquent photo and said, "Huh?" He turned pale and fell silent. I then left my in-laws' house. That feels better. Feeling refreshed, I stretched and realized, somewhere along the way, my headache had completely subsided. Later, I consulted my father, who introduced me to a lawyer, and I initiated divorce proceedings. The divorce was successfully finalized. As for my ex-husband's termination, I also consulted the lawyer. It was deemed a just cause, and his termination was confirmed. Thus, my ex-husband became unemployed. He had been living in a condo owned by my father, so he returned to his parents' home. However, shortly after he left, he called me. I thought it was about some forgotten item, but he pleaded, "Let me stay with you." What happened? I asked. It turns out, he was kicked out of his parents' house. What? Didn't they tell you to come back? My ex-mother-in-law was furious, telling him, "There's no need to be married to such a wicked wife. Divorce her and come back," he said during our parting. But why then? It seems my mom was also told by my dad to divorce and was kicked out. What? Apparently, my ex-father-in-law had had enough of my ex-mother-in-law's behavior. After hearing about our divorce, he decided it was time for him too. Since the house belonged to my ex-father-in-law, my ex-mother-in-law was evicted. My ex-husband was told, "A foolish son has no place in this house," and was also kicked out. Somehow, he managed to stay at his parents' house for one night. But later he and his mother found a new, run-down place to move into. They should have had a substantial amount of money from dividing their shared property in the divorce. Yet, somehow, they were already broke. Why do I know this epilogue? Because my ex-husband called again asking, "Can you lend me some money?" My ex-mother-in-law, having received a significant sum from the divorce, misunderstood and thought she was wealthy. Originally, they had found a decent condo, but before moving, she blew the money on a spontaneous trip around the US and extensive shopping. Suddenly, they were penniless. There are people who spend without thinking when they suddenly come into a large sum of money. My ex-mother-in-law was exactly that type. My ex-mother-in-law is penniless. My ex-husband doesn't have much money either. Having been married for less than 2 years, there wasn't much in the way of shared marital assets. So the only place my broke ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law could afford to live was a rundown place. And now, my ex-husband keeps asking me for money. I can even hear my ex-mother-in-law's voice over the phone.
"Samantha, I was wrong. I apologize, so please send money right now."
No.
"How can you be so cold? I'm in trouble here."
I can't send money because I have a funny face.
"What?"
My ex-mother-in-law is speechless over the phone. I'm the type to hold grudges. Isn't it nice, living with your beloved son, just the two of you?
"What's good about it? I have no use for a son who is just a lazy unemployed."
Well, just try to endure until you can get a pension.
"Wait, really, help me. Hey, Samantha, help us out. Save us."
While my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband were desperately shouting, I said, "Oh, bad signal," and used that old lie to hang up the phone. I immediately set up call blocking. I don't often use that setting, but I enabled it quicker than a blink. After that, I got no more calls from my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. However, I still receive updates through mutual acquaintances and my ex-father-in-law. It seems my ex-husband hasn't been able to find a job and is seriously becoming unemployed. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she started working part-time, but having been a housewife for so long, she's apparently not performing well at her job. And they argue almost every day. Since my ex-father-in-law also frequently receives pleas for help, I taught him how to set up call blocking, for which he was grateful. Finally, peace came. Years later, as I approached my 30s and thought I might remain single for life, I met someone and remarried. My new husband is very kind and considerate, and my in-laws are wonderful people. He is diligent at work, but he also values family. Thank you for everything, every day. Thank you, Samantha. Even as a married couple, we must not forget to appreciate each other. Our baby, a sign of our happiness, laughs between us as we laugh together. Oh, good evening. Ah, Lisa. I just met your sister. What? My sister. Yes. She looked so much like you, I thought she was you at first. No. What's going on? My sister is here? Maybe she came without knowing I wasn't here. Could such a coincidence be possible? Ever since the first time my sister came to my house, she hasn't visited me at all. But, could such a coincidence really happen? I can't believe it, but I pretended not to know anything and entered the house. Inside, only the bedroom light was on, and at the entrance, there were shoes that I thought belonged to my sister. She really did come. I thought, but I just greeted my husband at the entrance, saying I'm home, and took off my shoes and went inside. Oh no, hide. The moment I heard my husband's voice, I heard the sound of the balcony door slamming. I understood. My sister and husband had that kind of relationship. There's only one thing to do. I went ahead and locked the balcony door. My name is Lisa, and I'm 28, currently working in sales at a small business. I didn't go to college due to family circumstances and got a job immediately. While sending money home, I managed to live in the city, and after stabilizing my family's finance, I had some money to spend on my own, but having struggled with money before, I mostly set aside except for living expenses. It wasn't a homey company, so there was no tendency for everyone to go out for drinks after work, and basically, after work, I went home, did my chores, and went to bed. Living like this, I had no opportunities to meet men, and I was starting to panic that I might not even be married by 30. Hello? Oh, hello? Sorry for calling out of the blue. I'm out drinking right now, but if you're free, why don't you come? Now? Yeah, I'm drinking with a male friend, and we just talked about you. He said he'd love to have some drinks with you if you're up for it. Normally, I wouldn't go out to such invitations. But I also felt like I wanted to find a romantic partner, and I was feeling the pressure about marriage. So, although I wasn't too enthusiastic, I decided to go to the bar where my friend was. If it wasn't the kind of drinking party I expected, I'd just head back home. I decided that and walked into the bar, where I found a man about my age and my friend drinking together. I was surprised because I thought it would be a group of people. When I took my seat, he smiled and started talking. Nice to meet you. Sorry for calling you out of the blue. But when I saw your picture, it was love at first sight. I really wanted to meet you. Love at first sight, I've never heard anyone joke about that. I'm not particularly beautiful, nor I have a model-like figure. Could he really have fallen for me at first sight? That thought crossed my mind, but more than that, I was overwhelmed with joy. Thank you. I was too nervous and a bit embarrassed to look him in the face and express my gratitude, but as the three of us talked, I warmed up to him, and we ended up exchanging contact information before parting ways. Then, the following Saturday, he invited me out for lunch. It's just lunch, but if I don't make a move, I might never get married. With that thought, I was nervous, but I agreed to go to lunch, just the two of us. As we continued to meet like this, I found myself falling for him. I wonder what he thinks of me. Does he just see me as a friend to have meals with, or as a potential romantic partner? He had said he fell in love at first sight, but was that really true? They say love is blind, but I couldn't think of anything but him. Then one day, he invited me to dinner instead of lunch. He took me to a fancy restaurant on a hill, and I dressed up and put on more makeup than usual. There he was, waiting in a suit. Thanks for inviting me today. I've never been to such a fancy restaurant, so I'm a bit nervous. I thought a beautiful woman like you deserves a place like this. Besides, I wanted to make today special. Special day. I told you when we first met, I fell in love at first sight, and after several meals together, I'm sure of my feelings. Would you go out with me? I thought it might be coming, but when he actually said that, my heart raced and I couldn't find the words. I was too happy and couldn't help but smile. After taking a breath, I said, yes. That's how our relationship started, and we got married about a year later. I was really happy that things went so well. I was glad to get married before turning 30, and my parents were as delighted as if it were their own happiness. I'm so glad, my parents were happy, and I love him. With him, I felt we could have a happy married life. I thought so at the time. So, about our future life, do you have any wishes to be a stay-at-home wife? About that, considering we might have kids in the future, I'd like to keep working until then. I couldn't go to college for financial reasons, so I don't want to put my own children through that. And I know your job is demanding, so I'll help as much as I can with the housework. Is that okay? I'm not good at housework, and I often work late, so if that's okay with you, it's fine by me. But if you're gonna work, we should split the living expenses, right? What? Oh, yeah, that's fine. Splitting the living expenses. I have no complaints about that itself. If we're both working, it's only natural to split the living expenses. However, the way our conversation is going, it seems I'll be doing more of the housework. Of course, I'm good at housework, and I don't mind that, but if we're splitting the expenses, I'd like to split the housework too. I believe a marriage should be an equal partnership, without one person being superior to the other. Couples should cooperate and support each other, that's the ideal. However, his job and my job are completely different. Compared to him, who often works overtime, I usually finish on time. Considering that, it might be natural for me to do the housework. Also, my reason for wanting to work is to save money for the future. I'm not into buying branded goods or traveling, so putting half my income towards living expenses and saving the rest wasn't a hardship for me. Although I was a bit dissatisfied with the lack of fairness, I couldn't always have my way in everything, so I decided to accept it. One day. Hello?
It's been a while. How have you been?
What? Sister.
I changed my phone number, but you had blocked the previous one, right? I'm your only sister, we should get along better.
When I got a call from an unknown number, it turned out to be my sister who is 3 years older than me. I had cut ties with her and hadn't been in touch, so this was a shock. We had become estranged about 10 years ago. Back then, she was in college and I had started working since I couldn't afford college myself. I had a supportive boyfriend since high school, and we had been together for over 3 years. Back when I still had contact with her, she knew my boyfriend. But then, on Christmas Day, the truth came out. He was busy with a college paper and said he couldn't meet for Christmas, so our date was cancelled. I thought it was understandable, priorities and all, but in reality, he was cheating with her. I later found out that she seems to get a thrill from stealing other people's boyfriends, and this time I was the target. After that, I cut her off completely, and after graduating, I was even disowned by my family. So, her contacting me after 10 years was really surprising. What does she want? I'm married now and have no desire to associate with someone who steals partners. What do you want? I really have nothing to talk to you about, sister. Don't be like that. Besides, I heard you got married? Wait a minute. How do you know that? I heard you were estranged from mom and dad too. We went to the same school, so it's not strange we have mutual acquaintances. Plus, if you look on social media, it's easy to see you got married. Well, she's right about that. It's really depressing to know that the worst kind of person knows about my marriage. There's an unforgivable past with her. She stole my boyfriend, someone important to me. Of course, even if she tries to get close and take my husband now that I'm married, I can't see it being that easy. But for someone like me who wants to eliminate any risk from my surroundings, her existence is a nuisance. So why the sudden contact? It's none of your business whether I'm married or not, right? Well, maybe, but as your sister, isn't it natural to want to congratulate my sweet little sister on her marriage? Congratulations. I hope you'll be happy from now on. Thank you, but no matter your blessings, I have no intention of associating with you. With that, I hung up the phone. There were no more calls from her, but I sighed many times afterward. Why now? Just when I was starting to move on to a new phase in life as a married woman. Maybe over the last 10 years, she had come to regret her actions. It might have been just a pure blessing on her part, but to me, it's unforgettable and unforgivable. No matter how much time passes, I can't and won't trust her. From now on, I didn't even want her to contact me. And then, 1 week later, as my husband and I were home on a day off, the doorbell rang. I was just doing the dishes, so my husband answered the door.
Sorry to intrude. It's been a while.
What? No way, why are you here? I can't believe you have a sister. She wasn't at the wedding, and you never told me about her. We've got to make proper introductions, don't we? Wait a minute, how did she even find out where I live? And I told her I didn't want any involvement with her anymore. My mind went blank, and I struggled to contain my anger towards my sister, but my husband was welcoming her, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it right now. I managed to suppress my feelings and get through then. She made excuses like being busy with work for not attending the wedding, but I didn't want to start an argument, so I just nodded along and didn't say anything unnecessary. After about 3 hours or so, my sister and husband exchanged contact information, and she left looking satisfied. I wanted to say something about why she was exchanging numbers with my husband, but I was afraid he'd think I was jealous. Maybe I had too much pride, or I wanted to be seen as a composed woman, but I couldn't stop them. I was more worried it would end up like it did 10 years ago. Why didn't you introduce me earlier? I had no idea you had a sister. I've cut ties with her. And about 10 years ago, she stole my boyfriend. That's why I don't trust her anymore. I see you've exchanged numbers, but please, don't contact her. I had wanted to appear calm and composed when they were exchanging contact information, but I couldn't just keep quiet about this. I trusted my husband, but I had been betrayed by my boyfriend 10 years ago. It's not impossible that something could happen again. That's why I explained everything that happened 10 years ago to my husband in detail and begged him not to get involved with my sister. I see. Okay, I understand. I don't think there's any need to contact your sister, don't worry. I'm married now, and I wouldn't make such a mistake. Thank you, just hearing you say that makes me feel more secure. I was relieved, my husband believed and understood me. Well, my sister might keep contacting him relentlessly, but if my husband ignores her, that should be the end of it. I've come too far to let my sister ruin my happy life now. For a while, I was anxious about whether my sister had contacted him, but every time I asked, my husband reassured me that nothing had happened, and gradually, I stopped thinking about my sister. About a year later, there was a company drinking party, and I told my husband I wouldn't be home until late. It was February, and this year the temperatures were extremely low, sometimes below freezing from night to early morning. I wanted to get home quickly and jump into a warm bath, but since it was a company event, I reluctantly attended. However, it seemed I wasn't the only one who felt that way, and surprisingly, we wrapped up around 8 p.m. I was glad. I had told my husband it might take until 10 p.m., but I thought I'd surprise him by coming home early. Hi, good evening. Oh, Lisa. I just met your sister. What? My sister. Yes. She looked so much like you, I thought she was you at first. No. What's going on? My sister is here. Maybe she came not knowing I was out, but could such a coincidence be possible? Ever since the first time my sister came to my house, she hasn't visited me at all. But, could such a coincidence really happen? I can't believe it, but I pretended not to know anything and entered the house. Inside, only the bedroom light was on, and at the entrance, there were shoes that I thought belonged to my sister. She really did come, I thought, but I just greeted my husband at the entrance, saying I'm home, and took off my shoes and went inside. Oh no, hide. Though not loud, the house was so quiet that I could hear my husband's voice. Hide? Is he trying to hide my sister? It's going to be obvious what's happening soon enough. What kind of excuse can he possibly come up with? I was certain they were having an affair, yet surprisingly, I was calm, only thinking about how to confront them both. But neither of them was in the living room or the bedroom. Hello? Is anybody there? No response came back. No, could it be that my husband is also hiding? If so, it doesn't make any sense. Hiding my sister and waiting for me to take a bath so they could sneak her out, I could understand that. But why hide together? I had no idea what my husband was trying to do, but I wondered where they could be hiding and started searching the rooms. But wait a minute, why aren't they anywhere? I searched every corner of the room, but they were nowhere to be found. They couldn't have escaped through the front door because the bedroom is on the second floor. And my sister's shoes were still at the entrance. Only a few minutes had passed since I got home. Where could they have disappeared to? Then I noticed something odd. The curtains, which are usually open even at night, were closed today. It was one of my husband's unbreakable habits, suspicious. Thinking this, I quietly opened a window near the balcony. And then, weren't you supposed to be back around 10? This is totally different from what you said. I was surprised too. I never thought Asid'd be back this early. What are we gonna do? Let's wait for her to take a bath or something. I heard my husband and sister whispering these things, and realized they had hidden on the balcony. If it had come to this, there was only one thing for me to do. Without opening the curtains, I slid my hand through the gap and locked the balcony door. In that instant, they panicked and tried to open it from outside, but I turned off the light and headed to the bedroom. Their clothes were left strewn about, and they were locked out on the balcony in the middle of winter without their clothes. Honestly, I was disappointed in my husband, but for now, I just lay down on the sofa in the study on the first floor. Then, probably realizing the trouble they were in, my husband called. "Hello? Hello? You're back?" "Yes, but I don't know what you're doing on the balcony. Why don't you reflect on it overnight?" I said just that and hung up the phone. He called several more times, and they kept banging on the window from the balcony, but after I texted them that calling the cops might be next if they continued, they stopped completely. Well, maybe they thought the police could help them, but they probably couldn't think straight because of the cold. Of course, I left the balcony door locked that night and slept in the study, and the next morning, I realized I couldn't just leave them out there indefinitely, so I decided to unlock the door. There they were, looking like they hadn't worn clothes all night and were nearly debilitated. "Hey, it's getting cold inside. If you're coming in, could you hurry up?" I said that, and they silently entered the room. They had been left out in sub-zero temperatures. They probably didn't even have the energy to speak. Well, I don't really care about that. For now, since I didn't want to look at their bodies, I made them put on the clothes they had left and sit in the living room. "Can you explain from the beginning what happened? What were you two doing while I was away? And this isn't the first time, is it? I mean, you can lie if you want, but just so you know, it will be easy to find out, so I wouldn't recommend it." "I'm sorry. My husband isn't the type of person to stand up for himself. I hate to say it, but my boyfriend from 10 years ago was the same way. Maybe he was seduced by my sister and couldn't resist. But that's no excuse. He should have firmly declined since he's married. I had warned him about this. Failing even that, as a person and as a husband, he's finished. I had no intention of defending him, and even though he came to apologize, I had no intention of forgiving him." "You need to tell me what you're apologizing for." "I'm sorry for having an affair." "So, you did have an affair?" "I'm sorry. I thought once wouldn't hurt, but then it just continued." It seemed like he was straining to speak, but clearly, it had started when he succumbed to my sister's seduction. Why can't he tell right from wrong? Was he that desperate? But at least he's apologizing, which is more than I can say for my sister. She started it and had done the same thing 10 years ago, yet she hadn't said a word of apology. Just sitting there warming her own hands. Is this a joke? "So, nothing from you, sister? Do you understand what you've done? It's below freezing outside, and you locked us out. We could have died. You haven't changed at all in 10 years, have you? Don't you think what you did was wrong? What if something had happened to us? Don't tell me you didn't understand that." That's my line. After doing the same thing 10 years ago, hasn't she learned anything? What has she been thinking all these years? She's over 35, an adult stealing someone else's partner. What's fun about that? Cheating is something even a child knows is wrong. Does a woman over 30 not understand that? It's outrageous, and with my sister not even trying to apologize, all I felt was beyond anger. I was disappointed. "Just tell me one thing. Why did it have to be my partner again? You were always the favorite with our parents, and you got married. How could I stand by and watch you be happy while I was miserable? Don't you think it's weird I'm the only one suffering?" Wait a minute. You told me I was handsome. You said even though you really wanted to get married, you'd be okay just being physically involved. Was that a lie? That was obviously a lie. I don't care about being physically involved. It could be anyone. It didn't have to be you. I was just using you because I was irritated seeing my sister happy and you were available. I see. Well, I figured as much, but my husband was completely duped by my sister. Pathetic, duped by my own sister and trailing after her like a puppy. It's like a honey trap, but both the seducer and the seduced are at fault. What my sister is saying is all over the place. considering everything she's done up to now. On the other hand, even though she graduated from college, why is she leading such a miserable life? I've had a tougher life than my sister. After high school, I worked hard and managed to get married because I seriously put in the effort. I bet my sister just played around after graduating college. It's only natural that this is the result of her actions now in her 30s. To resent me and try to ruin my life again is just insane. Well, I'm glad everything is clear now. I will be taking legal action, and I won't let this go easily. Legal action? What are you talking about? You should be apologizing to us first. Listen. The person you stole wasn't just a boyfriend, he was my legally married husband. This qualifies as infidelity, and you have to pay me compensation. Don't you understand such basic things? You went to college, but you don't know this common sense that even a high school graduate like me knows. Really, your education was a waste of money. When I firmly said this, my sister just gritted her teeth and glared at me, but because my argument was too solid, she couldn't respond. As I told my sister, I really intend to demand compensation, and I'm not just going to let this end with estrangement. I will pursue this to the fullest. She has messed up my life twice. She will take full responsibility for that.
I will do better as a husband from now on. I'm truly sorry.
Are you saying that to your future wife? We are getting divorced, so it doesn't matter. What? Why are we getting divorced? I apologized, didn't I? Do you think an apology fixes everything? Grow up. If apologies solved everything, we wouldn't need police or laws. Can you stop taking people for granted? Earlier, my sister didn't even apologize, and I thoroughly reprimanded her for that. So, my husband must have misunderstood that his apology might suffice. Doesn't he realize how ridiculous that sounds? If apologies were enough, then everyone in the world would just apologize after causing problems. Why do definitions of infidelity exist? Why do rights to claim compensation exist? Obviously, because an apology is not enough. You're an adult if you don't understand how to take responsibility for your actions. What kind of person have I been married to? I'm just disappointed in my lack of judgment. We will probably discuss this in detail through lawyers, but I'm severing ties with you too, and you will definitely be paying compensation. Be prepared for that. Wait. I don't have that kind of money. I haven't saved anything. I can't afford to pay compensation. That's not my problem. If you don't have the money, you'll have to borrow it and pay. If we can't agree on the compensation payment, I'm ready to take it to court. You better realize that this will only tighten the noose around your neck. No matter how much they apologize, I won't change my mind. After such a massive betrayal, I need to ensure justice is served. My sister has been silent since then, probably understanding what I'm saying. There's nothing more to discuss with them, and just sharing the same air is irritating. There's nothing left for me to say to you too, so I'll be leaving. Since the house wasn't in my name, I quickly gathered my belongings and left. I immediately contacted my parents, and I decided to stay at their place for a while. Naturally, my parents were furious about what my sister and husband had done, and they showed their full support for me. I then consulted a lawyer to claim compensation from them. They initially resisted, claiming they couldn't pay the amount, but when the lawyer mentioned taking it to court to set the sum, they reluctantly agreed. They probably realized they couldn't afford a lawyer for a court case, let alone the additional costs. Moreover, a simple free consultation would have told them that my claims were not unreasonable. Even if it had gone to divorce court, they would have almost no chance of winning, and frankly, no lawyer would want to take such a losing case. I received the compensation from them and cut all ties completely. They begged to make payments in installments because they said they didn't have the money, but I couldn't trust people who would betray others. I insisted on a lump sum payment, and they grudgingly complied. I then exposed everything to our mutual acquaintances, and as a result, they not only lost money but also their social connections. I suppose with their personalities, they would have drifted away from people anyway. I felt no sympathy watching them lose everything all at once. Somehow, word got out about what happened, and my ex-husband even ended up leaving his job because he had no place there anymore. He must struggle to pay off the debt he incurred for the compensation, but I think he should just suffer through it. I used the compensation to take a trip with my parents, refreshing my spirit before starting a new chapter in my life. Whether I remarry or who I might meet in the future, I don't know. But moving forward, I want to choose someone who can make sound judgments as a person. Someone who isn't swayed by immediate temptations and can control their own heart. That's the kind of person I want to find. My name is Margaret Anderson. My husband and I have been married for 3 years, and we don't have kids yet. The more we want them, the harder they seem to come by. So, my husband and I live with his parents. We've been married for 3 years without having children, so living together hasn't changed that outcome. That was the reason for living with my in-laws. And my husband was the one who agreed to this nonsensical idea. We have such a big house. There won't be any problem if my parents live with us. What can you do when faced with that? Sure, there are no real issues, just a bit of tiptoeing around. But what shocked me after moving in was that my in-laws think this big house was bought solely with my husband's salary. And they think I'm paying off my credit card with his income, so they use it as they please. By the way, my husband is 30 and works a regular office job. There's no way an employee of his age could earn such a high salary. Yet, without any doubt, they believe everything he says. So, how is this possible? Because I am the CEO of a company with over 1,000 employees. But I haven't told this to my husband. If he knew how much I make, he would totally rely on me and become a deadbeat, which is obvious. Since we got married, I've also realized that my husband is very dependent and doesn't hesitate to lie. That's why I've decided never to reveal my true self. But it's impossible to keep it a secret forever. After all, my husband works at my company. One day, my husband saw a company brochure and exclaimed with shining eyes, "Hey, it says here that you're the boss." My husband, who prefers playing over working, wouldn't normally look at such a brochure. I hadn't paid any attention to it either. But as he joyfully showed me the brochure, I was secretly panicking. So I told a painful lie. It's a misprint. A misprint? Yes, I told them to fix it, but they haven't done it yet. Why would there be a misprint? Because, you see, it's my father's company. I'm just a secretary, but the person in charge made a mistake. Oh, I see. I thought for a second you had become the president. That's too bad. If I were the husband of a president, I could live off playing. There's no way that could be true, a woman like me being a president? If I were, I'd be earning more and living a better life. That's right, a woman couldn't handle being a president. I thought my husband was truly foolish for believing such a ridiculous lie, but just this once, I was glad he was. However, his foolishness has gradually started to weigh on me. For about a year now, he's become distant. I don't know why. I loved him, and his carefree nature seemed enviable to me, someone who takes everything too seriously. And I thought he loved me too. But it turns out, I was the only one who thought so. My suspicion turned to certainty when I saw him walking cozily with a receptionist one day. I hadn't thought she was his affair partner and casually greeted them.
Oh! Margaret!
My husband's face went pale in an instant.
Why are you here?
Wait, that surprise, could it be you? Then the receptionist, Holly, said with a laugh. I've got myself a company heir. What? Who's the heir? As I threw my question filled with confusion, my husband hurriedly blurted out. Not like the gloomy introvert, but a model-level mistress. I love Holly, so I've decided to remarry her. What? I couldn't understand what he was saying. Indeed, the woman in front of me was young and beautiful, like a model. I seemed to remember my husband insisting on hiring a beautiful woman as the receptionist. Because the receptionist should be the flower of the company. If she's not pretty, The visitors will be put off. Tell that to the president. Thinking I was just the president's secretary, he had pushed this beauty policy on me. And so Holly was chosen. Indeed, every receptionist I see sitting at their desks is beautiful, so it probably does improve the image. I had thought this carelessly, never imagining it would turn out this way. Remarry? How? You're married, aren't you? Oh boy, I can't remarry without divorcing first, so obviously I'm going to divorce. You intend to divorce me? Yeah, of course. You're really gloomy, and you're not right for me. What suits me is a bright and charming woman like this. Is that so? His words were so nonchalant, I didn't know how to respond. And as the president, I couldn't afford to scream and cry. Well, congratulations then. Pride took over, and I ended up saying something that sounded like I was condoning his affair. I left the scene and headed home, to a house I doubted my husband would return to. Once home, I entered the bedroom and sat down, stunned. Then the scene replayed in my mind. Holly's arm entwined with my husband's. My husband's face, gleaming with joy. Holly pointed at a brand store and said she wanted something from there. My husband nodded in agreement. The gloomy and unfriendly woman, he said. So, I wasn't loved after all. It was only me who loved, while my husband, Simon, saw me that way. Now I understand why my husband had been cold to me. If he's in a relationship with such a beautiful woman, I can understand him becoming cold. And if he's thinking about remarriage, there's no way he could love me. All I had was the profile of being the president's daughter. He was attracted to that and married me just for it. What a sad marriage it was. I never imagined it would turn out this way when we first got married. He was kind, always giving me plenty of sweet words. When I fretted over small things, he reassured me, saying they weren't worth worrying about, and dispelled my anxieties. How happy that made me. As long as the president was at the office, I, his secretary, couldn't leave either. Believing such lies, my husband used to prepare meals for me. That stopped once we started living with my in-laws.
A wife's job is to cook. It's wrong not to take care of the house just because you have a job.
I thought he said that, and when I came home tired, I found meals delivered on the table, all plates empty. There was nothing left for me. My husband and in-laws seemed satisfied, lounging in front of the TV. In the end, it was my job to clean up the dirty dishes, and the trash can was stuffed with boxes I had never seen before. It was heartbreaking and confusing, why I was the only one to suffer like this. I couldn't understand it anymore. But realizing the reason lay in his infidelity, I thought I couldn't let it go.
That's right, I should talk to Dad. Dad, the chairman, will surely have a good idea.
I grabbed my bag again, and glancing at my in-laws rolling in front of the TV in the living room, I rushed out of the house. The next day, I summoned my husband to the president's office. Thinking the president was his father-in-law, he appeared in the president's office with a broad smile. Huh? Where's your father? Dad's in the chairman's office. Why are you here? This is the president's office. It's strange for you, the secretary, to be sitting in that chair. Even if we're family, not just anyone can sit in the president's chair. Only someone like me, the future president, should. You, a regular employee, are going to be the president? I'm just a regular employee now, but I'm your husband, so naturally. Really? But my father is sitting in the chairman's chair, in the chairman's office. Wait, does that mean someone else is sitting in the president's chair? The person in front of you is sitting here. What are you talking about? You're just the president's secretary. How long will you keep thinking that? What?
I am the president.
Excuse me? What are you talking about, a woman like you being the president? That can't be true. If that were the case, this company would be bankrupt. But the company hasn't gone bankrupt, has it? They say a woman can't handle being a president, that a woman can't do a decent job, but here I am, effectively running the company as the president. I don't understand. Why don't you just admit it? You're joking, right? I displayed the company's homepage on the computer screen and showed it to my husband. There, my photo was displayed, labeled as the CEO. What the heck, even the homepage is wrong. You better get that fixed soon. You still don't believe it, do you? You might not want to believe that your wife is the president, but this is the fact. I pointed to the nameplate on my desk, where the title CEO was clearly. Of course, it's written there as Margaret Anderson. No way. It looks like you finally believe it. So, that means I can just enjoy life from now on. What are you talking about? You said you wanted a divorce yesterday. No, that was just.
Then, I am assigning you to a different position.
What? A transfer? Why would that happen?
You've been unfaithful, and you're talking about divorce, so it's only natural you face some consequences. If I get transferred, I can't become the president.
President? Why do you think you could become the president? I'm your husband, aren't I? That's true. Aren't we in need of a future president? You seem to forget something important. I am younger than you, which means I'll probably live longer. So, we don't need a next president. I married you so I could become the president. But if you're set on divorce, there's no way you could become the president, right? No, just because we're divorced doesn't mean that. You're so carefree. I never intended to make you the president in the first place. And you want to remarry her, right? If I'm around, that would be inconvenient for you, so I'll give you a divorce. Here you go. The divorce papers are already signed. I placed the filled-out divorce papers in front of my husband. But realizing that signing them would be final, my husband seemed unable to reach for the divorce papers immediately. Even if you don't accept them now, I'll proceed with the divorce through a lawyer. I no longer recognize you as my husband. If Holly finds out I can't become the president anymore, she might dump me. How can you say such a thing in front of your wife? If you want to remarry her, you have no choice but to divorce me. Or do you intend to keep her as your mistress? Even if so, I'm divorcing you anyway. Well, it's not easy to find such a beauty. Then, you have no choice but to divorce. Anyway, I'm going through with the divorce, so you can remarry or do whatever you like. Worrying won't change the outcome. It also won't change the fact that you're being transferred to a subcontractor transport company. To a transport company? Yes, you've betrayed a wife who is also a president, so it's only fair. This conversation is over. Please call your girlfriend next. Call her for what? She'll be transferred to another department. You're trying to separate us?
Whether you drift apart is your own issue. You've caused this mess, so of course, there are consequences. This is a company decision, so no matter what you say, it's pointless.
Please, don't be too harsh on her. I'm not being harsh. I'm just doing what's necessary. Now, call her in. As I yelled that, Simon slumped his shoulders and left the CEO's office. Next to enter was the receptionist, Holly. Huh? Why is the wife here? Can't you believe I'm the president too? Well, Simon said that the wife being the president must be a typo. Whether you believe it or not, I don't care. You tried to steal the president's husband, so I'm assigning you to the factory.
The factory? Why? Why does a beauty like me have to go to the factory?
Is there a problem with a beauty working at the factory?
But factories are not places for old ladies and old men.
That's not true at all. What misunderstanding are you under? I hate it. It's a joke to send me to the factory. Even so, our relationship won't end. I don't care if it ends or not. I've already given him the divorce papers. If you want to remarry, go ahead. Really? Yes.
So, I can marry the heir?
The heir? Yes, marrying him means I'll eventually become the president of this company. We might not be able to right now, given the current situation, but once things cool down, he's bound to become the president since he's the president's son. You seem to be under a big misconception. But, that's fine. Are you serious though? Do you really love him?
Of course.
I wonder if it's just because he's the heir. If you love him that much, you'll be able to endure it. Endure? What do you mean? Hasn't he told you anything? Told me what? He lives with his parents. That means I used to live with my in-laws. The in-laws are big spenders and never cook for themselves. So, you'll have to cook all the meals or opt for delivery. As the president, I often came home late, so the in-laws ordered delivery almost every day. Well, I don't think delivery is a bad thing. But his salary won't be enough to cover the payments. But we've managed until now. Because I had an income. Oh. Things were possible because I was the president. So now, you'll have to make sure to cook every day, or it will be tough. He'll do it, for sure. That's what you think. He doesn't do anything at home. He thinks housework is a woman's job. Even if the trash is scattered around, he won't bother picking it up. Really? Well, that's fine. You get to live in that big house, after all. House?
Yes, that house was bought with his salary, wasn't it? So even if you divorce, I won't give that house to you. There'll be no division of property.
Huh, is that what you think?
Of course.
Well, okay. You'll see soon enough. Just watch out for his parents' spending habits. I'm not involved anymore. I'm sure he'll handle it. After all, they're his parents. It has nothing to do with me. And if you like delivery, it's easy. I like delivery too. Besides, a beauty like me shouldn't have to do kitchen work and ruin my hands. It's unthinkable. Is that what you think? I hope that mindset doesn't change. You're just trying to scare me, aren't you? What? Jealousy in women can be frightening. But, thank you for letting me know you're divorced. So, can we pretend the transfer to the factory never happened? I won't go to the factory, and I'm quitting the company. Quitting? Yes, why should I work hard if I can marry the heir? I don't need to work, I'm about to debut in society. Wow, that's incredibly optimistic. Well, okay. She said, I'll submit my resignation, and then she left the CEO's office. However, despite her confident words, my comments seemed to have struck a nerve. That night, she confided her worries to Simon. Hey, don't you have something to say? What? No, nothing. They told me I was transferred, but what about you? Oh, I stayed at the headquarters because I'm the president's son. So, your life doesn't change at all? Of course not. I'm the heir, after all. Who else is going to be the next president? But now the wife was the president, right? Yeah, that. That was because of this situation. For now, they let her be the president until things cool down, and then I'll be the president. Company management involves a lot of external issues. But don't worry, she was just my wife because of her position. After we divorce, she won't have a place here anymore. There's nothing to worry about. Really? Yeah, really. That's good to hear. I quit because they said I would be working in the factory. What? Because a beauty like me shouldn't be in a factory, right? Yeah, that's right. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. After all, I am the heir. It was just harassment from her, wasn't it? Huh? Her, you mean Margaret? Yes, she called me in today and said a lot. But there's nothing to worry about, right? Because what you say has always been consistent. You being the heir is an unshakable fact, right? Yeah, of course. Holly looked at Simon with joy, but just then, Simon's phone rang. Picking it up and seeing my name on the screen, he tapped the answer button. What now, at this hour? Sorry to interrupt your fun time. But it's important. What is it? You need to move out of the house within a week. What? Why? I'm giving the house back to my father. Why? We're divorced, and it would be troublesome if you stayed. Can't I just keep living there? That's not possible. The house belongs to my father. Why does it have to be that way? Didn't you give it to me? He was just lending it to us. We were newlyweds and, being the president, living in a shabby house would have been pitiful, so he bought and lent us that house. But now that we're divorced, he thinks I wouldn't want to live in a house full of memories.
I don't mind living in a house full of memories at all.
You don't have the right to live there, it's my father's property. If you really want to stay, you'll need to talk to him. We lived there together, it should be part of our joint property. We should divide it. But the house was borrowed from my father. It's not part of the assets to divide. And everything in that house was also provided by him. However, I'm giving you all the money in your account, though it's not much. That's still better than losing half to me, right? That's true, but where am I supposed to go? Isn't there a room where your girlfriend lives?
It's an apartment.
That's not my problem. You chose that. Take your parents with you too. Oh. I forgot my parents were still there. Oh, that's tough. Come on, let my parents stay in the house. Your parents are your responsibility. You figure it out, it's none of my business. After saying that, the call was abruptly ended. A week later, Simon and his in-laws moved out. They moved to his girlfriend's apartment, of course. I assumed they were getting along fine as a family of 4. That was what I thought. However, 3 months later, Simon contacted me. This is just awful. Without any greetings, that's what he said when I answered the phone. Oh, what happened? She found out everything I told her was a lie. What you told her? What exactly? That I was an heir, the son of a president, still working at the headquarters, and would someday become the president, despite being sent to the distribution center. What? That's a huge lie. In fact, it's all lies.
I couldn't help it.
I don't see how you couldn't. I thought I should marry her before she found out about the lies. Once we're married, it wouldn't be easy for her to leave, even if she discovers the truth. So, you did marry her, right? That's the thing, she refused. And she started complaining about how unbearable it was to have 4 adults in such a small apartment. She said if we were to get married, I'd have to sort out the house situation. Well, that makes sense. You used to say that house was yours, but as soon as we got divorced, you started saying it's strange to let go of the house. If you were really an heir, you should be able to handle a house. Yeah, that makes sense. Why do we have to live in such a small apartment if you're so rich? She was furious about it. So, I told her living in an apartment was my dream because we always lived in a big house, but she said she hated how small it is. Of course, she would say that. And now my parents are saying, how long do we have to stay in this cramped place? I told them to wait because the new house is being built, but then she demanded to see the new house under construction. I told her she should trust me. It's crazy to trust you, you're full of lies. I've been told something similar. It's amazing how you can keep piling up lies. Why not become a con artist? That's a terrible thing to say. So, she left you? Yeah, finally she reached her breaking point and said, let's live together again once the house is finished, and kicked me out. Wow, kicked out, huh? So now I have nowhere to go. My parents are with me, what should I do? I don't know. My parents are old, I can't make them sleep outside. Maybe stay in a really cheap motel? They are elderly. They can't do that. Plus, all our stuff got thrown out too. What a heartless woman. I don't know what to tell you. You reap what you sow, instead of blaming others, you should reflect on your own actions. Look, I can't marry her without a house. Let us live in that house. If this continues, my parents might get sick. There's nothing I can do about that. Please help me, I'm begging you. Should I rent it to you for $10,000 a month then? $10,000 a month? That's impossible. How much do you think I make? Before the transfer, you were making about $6,000, right? Now, since you're just doing dispatch work, it's about $4,000, I suppose.
Yes, that's right. My salary has dropped by $2,000.
But it's easier, right? Yeah, it's easier. You wanted to live an easy life, right? So, it's perfect for you. But with a salary of $4,000, there's no way I can afford $10,000. That's why an apartment would be just right for you.
Even if the salary fits, the space definitely doesn't. You know that. There are 4 of us, my parents and my girlfriend. That house is the best option for us.
Well, if you can pay $10,000, I'll rent it to you.
That's ridiculous. I can't do that.
Then you'll just have to give up. You have to figure it out on your own. I'm asking for help because I can't figure it out. And my parents are spending wildly. They even want to stay at luxury hotels now. They got used to spending money using my card. They were poor once, it's tough now. Yeah, that's right. Why did they start spending so much? When I was a kid, we saved everything. If I left the water running, I got scolded. If I left food on my plate, the same side dish would appear every day until I ate it. Eventually, it would dry out. We saved so much back then, how did it come to this? That's because they used my card. Plus, it's a platinum card, so it's unlimited. Your card was mine, right? Did you ever get a bill? You never paid anything, I covered all the payments. Is that right? Yeah, I've been taking care of everything without burdening you. You could act all high and mighty because you didn't know anything. I was trying hard thinking they were your parents.
Got it. Let's get married again.
What? If you marry me, I won't have money troubles. I'll put up with you even if you're gloomy or unfriendly. What about your girlfriend? She can just be the mistress. Oh, you're not marrying her? No way. She's too selfish. She looks good, but her personality is awful. You really are a better match for me. Let's remarry and start over. Is that so? Right now, Holly is here with me. She's listening to everything on speaker mode. What? Why is Holly there? She couldn't believe what you were saying anymore, whether it was true or false, so she came to me to check. So, everything you just said, she heard it all.
Holly, it's all a misunderstanding. I love you. Cut it out. You liar.
Holly had finally realized Simon's lies and was furiously yelling that they were breaking up. After that, Simon tried various ways to get back with her. Angry at his persistence, Holly wanted to get back at Simon and came to me with a plan. So I suggested, how about I file for damages against both of you? You can pass your damages on to Simon and then break up with him. She loved the idea and pushed the claim for damages onto Simon, then left him. But breaking up wasn't enough, he kept following her. So, she pushed the claim for damages on him and moved to another state. After Holly completed her move, I contacted Simon to tell him, Holly said to bill you for damages, so please pay up. If you can't, I'll garnish your wages. He was crying about how absurd that was. He kept begging, please help me, I want to get back together, but I firmly rejected him, saying, it's none of my business since we're divorced. Despite that, his parents' spending habits didn't improve, and with monthly bills plus damages, he ended up working 2 jobs day and night, and he's thinned down considerably. As for me, after breaking up, I moved back home. It relieved my stress, and I was no longer distracted by personal issues. Recently, I have been blessed with a kindred business partner and am living the happiest